begin by asking you a question, Tom. After you first saw the original Monsters, which I'm assuming you probably did.
Yes, I did. No, I didn't bother.
Were you instantly kind of creating a future in your head and kind of adding to this universe in your mind before you kind of sat down to start working on this project?
No, I think I went for a burger afterwards, actually, I seem to remember. I just went sick because I just was really interested I'd heard the vibe, on the street, that what he'd done. And I sort of... I was just really impressed by it. I was blown away by the innovation in it. I thought it was one of the most innovative films I'd seen for years. I really, really did. I thought it was amazing. I think it's one of those films that sort of polarises people, a bit like perhaps our film might. Some people could see the innovation in it and the virtue of the filmmaking, and I absolutely could. And I think it resonated with me in that I've been trying to do something similar with Misfits, in that trying to tell story with visual effects and build a more cinematic world for very little money. And I just thought that's really clever. So it was just in my head, and then it was probably a year or two later that Vertigo Films approached me and said, "Would I like to do something similar?" And I thought, yeah, absolutely yes, because it seemed really exciting, really exhilarating filmmaking. It would take me back to more kind of short filmmaking I'd come from, and which was just trying to make films with as much ambition and scale as I could, out of sheer tenacity and again, latitude of thought and ambition. So no, it wasn't an immediate connection, but it made sense as soon as they asked me.
Yeah, I was just wondering if it was if it was quite tough to balance kind of remaining faithful to the tone and the kind of style and of the initial movie, and then implementing your own kind of voice and your own style into this as well.
Yeah, that was the big challenge, was remaining faithful to the principles of the first and then making something stand alone. And but equally that was also the kind of mantra of it, really, and what we just kept hold of. I said to the producers from day one, I don't want to make a continuing narrative sequel here. If there's a narrative to be had, it's just about the ethos of the filmmaking. It's not about if that's the franchise. If Monsters has a prefix on the title, then that's what it's about. It's what it stands for. It stands for telling a wider story with a character story with more scale to it, and for new talent, breaking new talent in terms of the crew and the visual effects team, and me as a first filmmaker, and an exciting new cast, and holding on to those principles of the legacy of Gareth's film, but making something completely standalone, and they were right behind me on that. So I just said that all of that's really exciting to me, but it needs to be its own film, and so I think it needed to be different. We couldn't have gone and done another road movie that was essentially a love story. We had to find a way of making it completely unique. So a natural place to carry on where Gareth's film left off for me was through the military angle, and that was something I wanted to explore, and I'd always wanted to make a war film. I didn't expect it to be my first film, but I think we've told a war film in a particularly unique and character-driven way, in terms of it involving science fiction as well.
Because it must be really kind of encouraging. Obviously Gareth's success since the first Monsters, he's obviously gone on to do Godzilla. It must be sort of encouraging to know that big studios are paying attention to sort of more independent filmmakers, and actually, they're keeping their ears to the ground, and you can come from more modest backgrounds and still get your chance at a big blockbuster. That must be quite encouraging for filmmakers at the moment. Yeah,
it really is. It's really it's fantastic, but it's. I think you come to realise, there's a two-way relationship, that that the huge studios and the legendaries and Warner Brothers and whoever else, that they're looking for that new talent. They're keeping a very close eye on it because to find a filmmaker like Gareth is really exciting. And they're always looking for new ideas. They're excited, like audiences are excited by new and energising ideas, and filmmakers who want to tell films in an ambitious way with lots of scale and are full of energy to do so. And it's the same with in terms of actors. We're all really excited to find new talent all the time, because it's nothing more exciting than feeling like you're working with a real genuine new star and a new breaking that talent and discovering that talent. I think is one of the most exciting things about the film industry. And so I think yes, it is really, really fantastic that they're looking. I don't think that's why Gareth made the film, and it's not why I've made this film. But to know that they're watching is fantastic, and you know, especially our little British film industry here. I think one of the things about Monsters and Monsters Dark Continent and what it stands for actually is getting the attention of those people, because they are watching, but it's also hard to get their attention, like you say, and so with a film like this, you've got I think it's doing something that we're very good at in Britain, which is character studies and character-driven movies, but doing it with more spectacle, and saying, and actually knocking on Hollywood's door a little bit and saying, you know, visual effects isn't just your preserve. Look, we can do it too in our own way. We just have to be more innovative about it.
And Joe, I just wondered if you could tell us a bit about sort of your character and how he fits into this story.
Okay, so I play Private Frankie Maguire, who, I mean, the story essentially follows a group of lads who have grown up together in Detroit, which I don't know if you know much about sort of the state of Detroit at the moment, but it's right now it's a city kind of on its knees. So maybe, you know, looking a bit further into the future, it's, you know, it's a place with very few prospects, and which kind of rings true with the kind of a lot of armies kind of recruiting techniques. Actually, you know, they target places where there's not a lot going on for kind of young men, and where a lot of them are quite disenfranchised, and so that's where we join the story. Is that, you know, this group of mates who have been friends their whole lives, about to ship out for their first tour, and Frankie, his kind of position within that group is he's kind of Mikey's best and oldest friend, the closest thing he's actually got to any family. He's the one who seems the most excited about going to war. Has the most kind of bravado and the most front. It's kind of life and soul of the party. But then the interesting thing being that actually, you know, sort of when confronted with the realities of war and all that entails, it's actually, you know, Frankie that maybe has the most extreme reaction to that initially, which was obviously great as an actor to portray those kind of two sides of the same coin.
Of course, you're putting on an American accent in this one. I was just wondering if that took a while to kind of get into the swing of, or was it something that came quite naturally to you?
Interestingly enough, I because, you know, you're constantly kind of auditioning for American parts and things, and so you get to before we started this movie, my American accent was decent, like it was okay, and then I sort of thought that I listened to some, you know, videos of people that were from Detroit and couldn't really, you know, you're sort of like you're listening for something that you can sell the accent on, you know, like New York has that kind of drawl that you can sell it with, whereas Detroit didn't really seem to have any of that. But it was only when, after sitting down with the dialect coach, that we realised that it is actually quite a specific accent, and she really put Sam and I through our paces, this dialect coach, Anne Whitman, and by the time we got out there, we were all pretty deep, we were all pretty good, and what aided that further was the fact that all the kind of British or Irish actors out there, we kind of just made a decision that we were going to stay in our American accents. Well, Johnny Harris did first of all, and so I would speak with my American accent when I was talking to Johnny, just so that he didn't sort of like, also it would help him sort of stay in it. And then we all ended up just kind of doing it, and all ended up kind of sort of becoming our characters a bit more offset than we maybe should have been, particularly Pinnock.
I think that they I remember I brought the guys out for a week or so before we started shooting, and they went through a training like boot camp process, and we worked with two fantastic, amazing former US Marines who were based out there, and they did all their weapons training and put them through a boot camp process, but in that first week I remember we were out for lunch, and Johnny said, I'm going to just go into America and I'm going to stay there. And it was a moment where it was a certain inhibition, you know, freeing of inhibition, where they all just started talking, you know, as Americans, and in the accent all the time, and you know, and I think there was a trust between all the cast, and you know, as I tried to create that environment but I think within the group themselves, as a group of actors, they were on each other's side completely, and you know, we would run takes long sometimes, and they would be aware they weren't on camera, but they were giving it, you know, hell for leather, you know, and full commitment and all the emotion to the other actor who was on camera, you know, very generous with each other, and I think the accent was just a part of that in a way. There's a couple of touchstones I think probably helped as well. We had a young man from Detroit he'd done 2 tours of Iraq as a former soldier, and I made him part of the cast, and to Carl Soller and Parker Sawyer are American, and I think with the US Marines, I think it became there was touchstones, and there was
an
atmosphere that helped, I think.
Yeah, like you say, I mean that week that we had in prep before was invaluable. But I think what the most important thing was the atmosphere that was created on set, and Tom, was a massive part of that, and also Johnny Harris too is one of those actors that he can instill a certain work ethic and a certain loss of inhibition amongst people that he's working with as well as himself, which I think really aids things massively.
Yeah, I mean he's playing a leader in the film. He's playing the sergeant of this patrol of very young, naive kids really who think they've come out to war, and they think perhaps it's a bit of a game, and they very quickly are confronted by the stark realities of the cultural collision that they're in, and also the nature of warfare. And the film has an authentic core. That's what we base all the drama on. All the dramatic sequences, that obviously not the creature sequences, are all based on first-hand accounts of people I met. I worked with undercover British operatives, and met other soldiers, and we worked with these US Marines on set, and had a former soldier as part of the cast. So we really tried to build up that authenticity to the film.
And is this a franchise you can see yourself perhaps exploring again one day, Tom?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, potentially. I think I think with anything you just need to, like with this, I've asked myself the question, and the producer the question, why make it? And I felt satisfied ultimately that there was a reason to make this film, and I'm deeply proud of the film I've made. So I believe we want everyone to go and see it. I think for what we've tried to achieve for very little. The misconception here is that we had a lot more than Gareth. We didn't. What we had was the same ambition, and if not more ambition in terms of how far you can push the visual effects, and to make a war film rather than a more intimate character film, I suppose. While ours is an intimate character film, but a love story. The nature of doing a war film is inherently has more scale, and so
But it's also for me, it is a war film, but that's only one level on which you can view that. I think this is a really thoughtful movie that it kind of has and you kind of have to scratch the surface of it, a bit more to kind of to sort of find the sort of the deeper resonance. Like for me, it's the entire film is a sort of a critique of Western culture. I mean, for me, it's a film in thirds, and that's what I take from it, and so I think it shouldn't be taken on face value as just a kind of a gung-ho war movie. It actually delivers something a lot more thoughtful than that.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. It's not that. I think people who want looking for those elements won't be disappointed, but ultimately it's a layered film. We work very hard to make it have a soul, if you like, and then explore some very socially relevant issues and in a really in-depth way. But like Joe says, you have to scratch the surface. You have to look deeper, and that I also wanted that to be an open-ended question. I didn't want to answer those things. I wanted that to be, and Jay, who I wrote the film with, we wanted that to be something the audiences can find meaning and derive their own meaning from the creatures and from the film itself. And so it's a really it's a film that explores the human condition and hopefully asks some wider questions.
And just finally, very quickly, Joe, of course, you're in this sort of TV show called Game of Thrones, which a few people quite like. Which is
what's that?
It's a bit weird.
I've not seen it.
I'm just wondering if we can expect to see much of Gendry in the forthcoming season.
I'm not going to tell you. I respect you for trying, Stefan. But yeah.
I will, if we can come to a financial arrangement.
But I think that's been the nice thing about it. I mean, I know that we live in a world now where it's perfectly legitimate to actually fall out with someone for giving you spoilers on something on a TV show. But I think as a result of that, you get asked a lot less. People actually don't want it to be. People don't want to know anymore. So that makes our lives a hell of a lot easier.
So just to sort of follow on the fact quickly, I mean, does that mean that when you're not in an episode of Game of Thrones, or if there's a few episodes in a row you might not be starring in, are you able to watch it and enjoy it as like an audience member?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, actually, because initially in the first season, they wouldn't even give you the scripts for the episodes that you weren't in. I mean, that's changed. I mean, I ended up being in sort of like more and more episodes as it went on, so I knew the sort of the overarching narrative. But actually, that was the really nice thing about season 4 for me, was that I just watched it as a fan, and I was like everybody else. I was there on a Monday night waiting to see the next episode, and I genuinely didn't know what was going to happen, because I didn't want to. I hadn't asked, even among cast. You know, when you're meeting up, catching up for lunch or whatever, they'll start telling you a story about something that's happened maybe off set, but it'll be related to the work. And before they actually finish that story, they'll sort of say, "Oh, actually, do you want me to tell you anything about what we were filming? Because it's kind of related." And I go, "Oh, no, don't spoil it for me." So everyone's kind of sensitive to the fact that you probably don't want to know. And it's really nice to just enjoy it as a fan.
Do you dress up in your costume when you watch it at home?
If they'd let me keep it, I really would have done. I just sort of sit there, yeah, just looking like some sort of like oiled up porno blacksmith like I did in season 1, yeah.
And on that note, thank you so
much.
much.
On that bombshell, yeah.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks a lot, guys. Appreciate it.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're watching Hey You Guys!
Hey You Guys, huh?
Hey, you guys.
Is that from the Goonies?
It is indeed, yeah.
Nice.
Hey!